In 1976, drinkers across America started noticing something strange. In the most famous beer in the country, tiny white flakes were floating in the bottle. Little specks, drifting sediment, in a beer that was supposed to be crystal clear. People held their bottles up to the light, confused. Was it spoiled? Was it safe? Because it is never a great sign when your beer shows up with sediment you did not order. And the brewer knew exactly what it was. And it quietly pulled more than 10 million bottles off the shelves before too many people could ask questions. This was Schlitz, the beer that made Milwaukee famous, for decades America's #1. And within a few short years, it would all but vanish. So what on earth did they change? The answer is one of the most self-inflicted downfalls in American business. To understand how far this fall goes, you have to see how high Schlitz once stood. It began in 1849, when a Bavarian immigrant opened a tiny tavern brewery in Milwaukee. A young bookkeeper named Joseph Schlitz took it over, married the founder's widow, and put his name on the barrels. And that little brewery just kept growing. By 1902, Schlitz had passed every rival in the country to become the largest brewery in the United States. Over 1 million barrels a year, poured from one Milwaukee plant. And they had a slogan the whole nation knew by heart: the beer that made Milwaukee famous. For half a century, that was not a boast. It was simply true. But there was always one rival breathing down its neck. Down in St. Louis, Anheuser-Busch was building Budweiser into a machine. For years, the two traded the crown back and forth, one on top, then the other, season after season. Then came 1957. Budweiser pulled ahead for good, and Schlitz never took back the #1 spot again. And yet, do not feel too sorry for them. Schlitz did not fade away. It settled into a proud, powerful #2. Still one of the biggest brewers in the country, still fighting Budweiser bottle for bottle. Which raises the real question. If you are a strong, profitable #2, and you cannot quite outsell the king, what do you do next? Here is what Schlitz decided to do. If they could not sell more beer than Budweiser, they would make more money on every bottle they did sell. Their chairman, Robert Uihlein Jr., grandson of the family that built the company, went hunting for margin. And he found it in the one place you should never touch: the beer itself. Schlitz re-engineered how the beer was actually made. Fermentation, the slow, patient step that gives beer its flavor, was cut from about 2 weeks down to just a couple of days. Which is a bit like deciding a wedding cake takes too long, so you microwave the batter and call it dessert. Malted barley was swapped for cheaper corn syrup, fresh hops for hop pellets. On the accountant's spreadsheet, it was beautiful. Faster, cheaper, more beer out the door. In the glass, it was a very different story. But there was one more shortcut, and it is the one that mattered most. Real aging does something quietly useful. It lets the haze in beer settle out on its own, leaving it clear and bright. Schlitz had just thrown that time away. So to fake the clarity that patients used to give them for free, they reached for a chemical stabilizer, an additive to keep the beer looking clean. And for a while, on the surface, it worked. The beer looked fine. The numbers looked better. The trouble with chemistry is that it does not care about your quarterly targets. Sooner or later, it does exactly what it wants, usually at the worst possible moment and in front of the largest possible audience. In 1976, it happened. Schlitz introduced a new stabilizer, and it reacted, badly, with another additive already sitting in the beer. Together they formed those tiny white flakes, turning millions of bottles into the least appetizing snow globe in America. These are the specs from the very start of our story. The beer was not unsafe, but it looked spoiled, and for a beer, looking spoiled is very nearly the end. So Schlitz did the only thing it could. It quietly recalled more than 10 million bottles and cans at a cost of around $1.4 million and hoped the public would not notice. But the public was starting to notice something bigger. Schlitz just did not taste like Schlitz anymore. And 1976 had one more twist waiting. That same year, Robert Uihlein Jr., the man who had bet the whole company on speed and margin, fell ill and passed away at just 60 years old. For the first time in well over a century, control of Schlitz slipped out of the founding family's hands. The architect of the strategy was gone. The strategy stayed behind. And the people left holding it now had a panicking brand, a suspicious public, and a beer that had lost its old magic. So they did what desperate companies so often do. They turned to advertising. And this is the part nobody believes at first. It was 1977. Schlitz needed to look tough again to win back the drinkers drifting over to Budweiser. So they hired a famous agency and rolled out a campaign built entirely around one idea. Do not you dare take my Schlitz away. The ads showed hard, glowering men, practically daring the viewer to try switching their beer. The tagline snarled, "If you don't have Schlitz, you don't have gusto." And it was so aggressive, so genuinely menacing, that the industry itself handed it a nickname that has stuck for almost 50 years. They called it, "Drink Schlitz, or I'll kill you." And it turns out it is genuinely hard to feel warm and cozy about a beer that seems to be threatening you on national television. Viewers did not feel loyal. They felt cornered. The campaign was pulled after just 10 weeks. From here, the fall came fast. For 80 years, Schlitz had lived at the very top of American beer, or just one step below it. Number 1 in 1902, number 2 behind Budweiser from 1957, still holding number 2 as late as 1976. And then the line simply gave way. By 1980, Pabst had shifted past them. By 1981, Schlitz had fallen to 4th. Then came the final blow to the flagship. In June of 1981, around 700 workers walked out of the Milwaukee brewery on strike. The stoppage dragged on for nearly 4 months. And when it finally ended, the plant that had made Milwaukee famous shut its doors for good. By 1982, the giant was too weak to stand on its own. Rivals circled. Pabst and Heilmann both tried to buy Schlitz, and both were blocked by the government on antitrust grounds. So the company that finally swallowed Schlitz was an unlikely one. Stroh, a family brewer out of Detroit, roughly a third of Schlitz's former size. A minnow buying the fallen whale. Roughly the business equivalent of your little cousin buying your house at a yard sale price. Stroh raised its offer from $16 a share to $17, and the deal was done. A fraction of what Schlitz had once been worth. The beer that made Milwaukee famous no longer belonged to Milwaukee, or to anyone who had built it. But the story is not quite finished, because it saves its sharpest twist for last. Buying Schlitz did not save Stroh. If anything, it helped sink them. By 1999, Stroh itself had come apart, and its brands were sold off in pieces. And guess who ended up owning the Schlitz name? Pabst. The very same Pabst that Schlitz had knocked off the top spot to become America's biggest brewer, all the way back in 1902. 80 years after taking the crown from Pabst, Schlitz landed right back in Pabst's hands, a faded label in a rival's catalog. The wheel had come full circle. So what is the lesson hiding at the bottom of this glass? Schlitz did not run out of customers. It did not run out of money. It talked itself into ruining the one thing people actually loved, its own product, just to make a spreadsheet look a little better. They saved a few cents on every bottle and lost an entire empire. The beer that made Milwaukee famous is still around today, brewed once more from an older recipe. But the giant it used to be never came back. So here is a question for you. What is the biggest own goal you have ever seen a company score? Tell us in the comments. And which company should we open up next? Subscribe, because here we open the tapes the giants would rather keep closed. This was the Industry Tapes.